On a regular basis, we are presented with rankings that measure a country's level of equality. The Nordic countries are often on top of these lists. Women do very well in relation to men within education, labor market and political life in Norway. Some might argue that Norway's wealth only comes from natural resources like oil and fish. But the country's main asset is actually its workforce. And in Norway, we have a particularly high participation of women in the labor market. This fact has played a key role in our economic growth. I am an author, and for my next project, me and my co-worker Jenny want to know how exactly does Norway make gender equality work in the labor market.
Thank you.
Hi.
Okay. Hi.
Come in. We
Yeah.
have some questions for you
Yes.
about work-life balance, and I think you are the right person. You can sit on this chair. So Jenny and me, we make cartoons about gender and feminism, and now we are making a cartoon about women in the labor market and how Norway has gone about to get these numbers so high with the women in the labor market. And so and work-life balance is of course a very important part of this, and we are also going to interview a lot of other people from other sectors just to try and find what is our secret. Can you say something about that?
In Norway, as in many countries, kindergartens are a crucial part of the policies in order to promote work-life balance. It has also been part of gender equality policies and policies for mothers to enter the workforce. And together with the parental leave arrangements that we have, I think they are vital in order to provide families with the work-life balance that they want to have.
Yeah. You have to have a place to put your kids when you go to work.
Yeah, and in addition to this, of course, it's very, very important to the child to have access to a kindergarten. Kindergartens in Norway, they are the pedagogical institutions that provide early childhood education and care for children between 1 and 5 years of age. They are play-based and they are child-centered, and they provide the everyday that children need in order to thrive and develop and learn. And we have a holistic pedagogical philosophy combining education and care. We call it the educare model. And
Educare.
Yeah, educare model. It combines education and care. We think that education without care would be lacking. So care is a vital part, and it is combined in the provision that we have. We know about the importance of the quality for the child. And so it means that we have regulated it strongly. We have a curriculum framework that ensures quality across different profiles and across different settings that we have. What is also, I think, very special in the global context is that children in Norway, they have a right to a full-time place in kindergarten. It means that they don't have these type of horizontal transitions between kindergarten and other childcare arrangements that so many children will have to experience when there's only a part-time provision that is provided for them.
Yeah. And they can both have a full-time job.
Yeah, they can have a full-time job, or they can study. So it's really about promoting participation and in studies and in work life. And we have seen from even recent research, even after we have expanded our sector so much so that it's now more or less universally available to all children, and so many of the children participate in our kindergartens. Even now we can see that when we increase accessibility through affordability or through having enough places, then we see that women's workforce participation increases. So it is important in a gender equality perspective.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi.
Did you go to kindergarten?
Yes. Yeah, I did. From I think from when I was 3, 4. Yeah.
What? That's late.
I know.
Well, probably we didn't have enough spaces at that
Yes.
time.
Yeah, I think it was like
very
my parents
hard
were
to
struggling to find a space. So I think we were a couple of kids that went to this like woman who took care of us. A couple of kids.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it was kind of like a private small kindergarten before I went to the official one.
I loved going to kindergarten. That was the best time of my life.
Yeah, but perhaps this
Better
is,
than now.
this is, yeah, it's very nice of you to well, it's nice to hear, because of course we want it to be a type of space where the children can enjoy life, because it's a space for children. It's not the mothers and the fathers, they are going to work, but for the children it's so important that they can come there and play and be part of the community.
Yes.
Of the children that are there, and with the
And make
support
friends.
of the
Yeah.
absolutely. So we've had interviewed our children, what is the most important thing?
Yeah.
And they will say, having a friend.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it is true.
Okay. Who's this? Is it me?
I don't think it's you. It's not your haircut. So I tried to sketch down all of the important things that you talked about, but I don't think I got everything. So you have to kind of fill me in.
My mother was part of the women's liberation movement in the 70s. And when I realized how women have been discriminated against throughout the centuries, I started to read more about this. And the more I read, the more I wanted to get these stories out there to new generations. Unfortunately, kids do not learn that much about the women's liberation movement in school. And in some history books, women are hardly mentioned at all. I believe that it is important to remind people that previous victories are not carved in stone. Hard-won rights can be taken away from us again. We see that all the time. I really like to both write and read comics, especially if the theme is a bit serious, because I believe that this form can make it easier for both kids and adults to learn. Unfortunately, I cannot draw at all, so when I met Jenny, everything just fell into place. It has been a wonderful experience to see our book reach so many readers all over the world. I've been traveling a lot for the last few years, and everywhere I go I find that people are very eager to discuss the situation for equality in their home countries. And many are also curious about the situation in Norway, since we've come a long way towards equality here.
I think that everybody in Norway today feels that gender equality is part of the value in the Norwegian society. And I think that over the past 40 years we've seen a change in society when it comes to stereotypes and how we look at men as caretakers. And I think much of this is as a result of the family policies and of course the structures.
As we know, Norway has a very high percentage of female participation in the labour market. Can you tell us a bit about the path towards this?
Yes, of course. The path to high participation of women in the labour market has been a long one and a difficult one. A lot of successes, a lot of controversies, and a lot of public debate. There have been many stakeholders involved pushing for gender equality. We have, of course, the government, civil society, women's movements that became much more organised, research communities that started researching on time use of women and men. We have, of course, the media. All have taken part in the public debate pushing for more gender equality in Norway. And I think also we can say we've had decades of intervention from the government and the parliament, which has been the key to success in Norway.
Yeah, it's kind of part of our identity.
Exactly.
We are a bit proud that we do so well on these barometers.
Exactly. So because of this, there has been a political consensus across all political parties that yes, it is a good idea to promote gender equality, and yes, it is a good idea to promote or work for a high level of participation of women in the labour market. And this has been decisive for the change that we've seen in Norway.
Many people, they struggle with combining family life and their working role. Which structures has Norway adopted to make this easier for people?
I think if we talk about structures, it's important to start with the laws. Norway has a very regulated work market. We have our own Working Environmental Act. This was introduced in 1977 and maybe the most important milestone for gender equality in the work market. Why? Well, because it includes rights and it also opens up for flexibility for family life. At the same time, in 1979, Norway also got the first Gender Equality Act, an equally important act. It states women's rights, also related to the work life. It states gender equality, and it provides a protection against discrimination. So the formality or the regulation of the work market is very important. Secondly, we have the tripartite cooperation. This is a cooperation between the government and the social partners. Why are they important? Well, they have actually taken a very active role in the formulation of the welfare system, but also in decent working conditions. The third structure that I would like to draw your attention to is, of course, the welfare state. Norway has a very comprehensive, very generous welfare system. This also has long traditions, and today it includes, among other things, free quality education and, of course, free healthcare services.
What are the most important parts of the Norwegian family policies?
Yes, the family policies, the Norwegian family policies are of course a very important part of ensuring a balance in work and family life. The paid parental leave, maybe one of the most important policies, is about providing paid leave for 12 months if you have a baby. 1/3 is a quota that goes to the mother. 1/3 is a quota which goes to the father. And the last third can be shared between the parents as they wish. And this is a very good incentive that helps parents share the responsibility for the child, but it also allows women to stay in work even though they have had a child or given birth to a child. And of course, maybe the most important measure that allows women to go to work is, of course, the kindergartens in Norway. Today, more than 90% of all children in Norway go to a kindergarten.
90%.
More than 90%.
You said that 1/3 of this parental permit leave is it goes to the father. Does all the fathers in Norway use this right?
In the beginning, a very low percentage of the fathers actually made use of the right to stay home with their child, but this has changed. And I think we can say that what we see, the result of the father's quota, is that there's been a distinct change in stereotypes in Norway. Today, we look very differently at men and their role as caretakers than we did, let's say, in the 70s. Wow, this is looking good.
Is that the tripartite cooperation?
That is the tripartite cooperation.
That's beautiful. That's really
the
beautiful.
Triangle here, all trying to promote
Exactly,
feminism.
promoting equality, gender.
I've been drawing my whole life, and illustration is like a second language to me. I use illustrations to express my feelings and opinions, and I was very quickly drawn towards comics, where you can combine words and illustrations. I feel like I'm able to say twice as much in half the time. In my early 20s, I became engaged in politics, especially in feminism, and I started making comics about topics I cared strongly about. That was also when I met Marta, and we started working together. It was an instant match, and we've stuck together since then.
So do you think that we should be a part of the comic?
Yeah.
As to people like that we can explain or ask questions?
Yeah.
Or, yeah.
I think we should womansplain the whole thing for them.
Have you met her before, the ombud?
Yes, a couple of times, once in Copenhagen, but I don't think she remembers me because she's a bit famous. Can you say something about how you and your office work with work against discrimination?
Yes, I'm the Ombud, and I'm appointed for 6 years, and I'm an independent body, and that's very important because that we can't be instructed by the government in any means. And we have a broad mandate, and we use different means when we are working. But one very important part of the work is that we can guide people who contact us. They have an issue, am I discriminated or not? And we will then go into the legal issues, and we can help them. And we can also help them by talking to their employer. And very often also we talk with the employer and the employees' organizations, because I have to stress that this is also very important actually to uphold anti-discrimination laws. And we can help them to file a complaint to the tribunal that I just mentioned.
Yeah. Can you tell us something about which legal cornerstones we have in Norway to prevent discrimination in the workplace?
I would be happy to, because I think it's very important to have a strong legal framework if you are to obtain equality in the workforce. And Norway has something called the Equality and Anti-Discrimination Act, which runs back to the end of the 70s, but it has of course been amended many times since that to adopt changes in the society. But it's a quite strong legal framework, setting clearly saying very clearly that you cannot discriminate women when applying for work during their time in the workforce. And I think what is important to highlight is that it also encompasses strong legal requirements when it comes to protection against discrimination for giving birth and also having parental leave. Because that is really the area where many women, even in Norway, even when we have this strong legal framework, many women experience that they being maybe not discriminated but treated differently because they are going to have children.
Yeah, maybe you won't get promoted, or you won't get the same job back when you come back after a long...
From being home with your child, yes.
But that is not allowed. You're not allowed to give a woman a lower position after she has
You're not at all allowed, and it's the legal framework is really very strong on this. So the issue is more to make sure that you obtain your legal rights somehow. And you can complain into a tribunal. That's the other cornerstone, I think I should mention, that we have a legal tribunal, you could call it, which you can complain the cases, and they can make decisions which is decisive just for both private and public sector.
If you are discriminated against, then you can have...
you can claim for compensation, and the tribunal can give you compensation as well.
Yeah. But there's this word activity duty, which is, it applies to the employer. They have an activity duty. Can you tell me a bit about that?
Yes, I think that's a quite new, or at least strengthened tool we have in Norway in the Anti-Discrimination and Equality Act. And that is an obligation on the employer to work all the time, systematically, for equality and to combat discrimination. So they had to report on the work they're doing on an annual report, and that report should be publicly available. So it means that, and that's really good, it means that you should somehow every year make analysis of the situation in your company. How many women are working in my company? Where do they working? Do they all work in subordinated positions? What is their salary? Do they work part-time? Do they want to work part-time, or are they forced to work part-time? All these issues we see, which is very important when it comes to equality, and they should report on that overall situation.
They have to know. They can't say,
have to know.
We don't know what the pay gap is, or how many. They have to know everything and report.
And I think it's important, because I think that very often the employers do not want to discriminate. They don't want to treat men and women differently, but they're not just aware, or they don't care that much. But when they have to look into it and they say, oh my God, we are treating these women and men differently, why do we do that? And then they also, I think most would then want to change the situation. So I think this is a very important tool that I could recommend for everyone who wants to obtain equality in the workforce.
Yeah.
These four will tell like the storyline.
Yeah.
And then if we can manage to connect the different ones so that we see what
with the
fits
ideas,
where.
yes. Have you seen? This is course.
Some infographics.
Yeah, and it's about how the director or the board leader in the big companies is always
Male.
male. Yeah, and the numbers are spectacular.
When I grew up,
What?
It's
Is it Gro?
Gro Harlem Brundtland.
to have been raised in a family where boys and girls were treated equally, which was not normal, not the regular thing.
She talks
When I
about
grew up.
how she was raised equally in her family. Like boys and girls were treated equal in her family, and that was not the norm when she grew up.
The question for me was, what profession do I choose? I mean, I knew I was going to have education, go to the university like my parents had done. What would I choose? Economics, law, health? So in the end, I chose medicine. Here I am, 35 years old, and I was asked to come to the Prime Minister's office one day. And he asked me to enter the cabinet,
Yeah.
the government. I was shocked. I had no such plan. He had seen me write an article in the press.
So cool. Wow.
You were the head of the World Health Organization, your position, and
You
But
know.
she is like a pillar in Norwegian politics.
Yeah, and when I remember, you are too young to remember that, but I remember when she launched her almost all-female government.
Yes, and
It
written about that
It
before.
wasn't all-female, but because it was 6 female ministers, they called it the woman government.
Think about the government now. Or like,
Yeah.
or at least in some of the major positions. But if you go lower than that, it's mostly male, I think, now.
So she has been such an important person in the equality field in Norway. We didn't think of it like that when she was in power, because then we took her for granted.
Yeah.
And now we see how important she was. Just growing up and knowing that the prime minister is a woman.
Yeah, and have a role model.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's incredibly important for everybody who came after. Didn't we make a comic about that before? Or we did make a comic about, we made a comic about Plato.
Plato and
Yeah.
Aristotle.
Yeah, because Plato said that a society that only educates men is like a body that only exercises the one arm.
Yeah.
So like one arm will be super strong and the other will just be useless.
Yeah.
And like a good society should exercise the whole body
Use
and
all-
educate both women and men. Then.
So Plato was right, but unfortunately Aristotle didn't agree. That silly man.
Yeah. And a comic is also supposed to be super short, so we don't have a lot of space to do this
no.
at. We have to kind of break it down into the most important
topics. Yes.
and find a way to get that across. Oh,
Yeah.
that was nice.
So where do we start?
I don't know, I'm gonna draw Plato with the muscles.
Yeah, draw Plato. Hello, Mari, welcome. Glad to have you here with us. We know that also in Norway there is still a pay gap between men and women, unfortunately. Can you tell us a bit about where Norway stands on this issue, and also how we're working to close this gap?
First, it's important to remember that there's actually happened quite a lot in the 70s and 80s in closing the pay gap. There were relatively big differences, and the question about equal pay for equal work was not the case when the debate started. But the situation today is a bit different. Women, on average, they earn 89 kroner per 100 kroner a man earns. And there's not so much a problem anymore about not getting the same pay for the same type of work. The main problem today is that female-dominated occupations are paid less than male-dominated occupations. So it's often called worth discrimination, the situation that we are in now, and therefore also much harder to combat because it's more kind of systemic or structural reasons behind the gender pay gap in Norway.
Let's talk a bit about the top positions in the labor market. For globally, we see that women are less likely to reach the top levels of management, for example. How does Norway work with this issue?
Yeah, I mean, it's almost the same situation all over the world, that men in great numbers dominate top positions, and especially within the business sector. So one of the ways that Norway has tried to approach this problem is through the gender quotas for corporate boards. So for more than 10 years ago, the Norwegian government introduced gender quotas for corporate boards, saying that at least 40% of the underrepresented gender should be represented on these boards. And in many ways, it was a great success. I mean, before the law was introduced, it was less than 10% women in these boards, and today there are 40% and above 40% on all the boards covered by the legislation.
And this has happened in just 10 years?
Yeah, this happened in very short time, and I mean there was big arguments in advance that it would be impossible to find enough women to fill these boards and so on. But in fact, it has proved that it was possible, and also the opinions has changed a lot within the business sector. I mean, there was a lot of opposition against the gender quota before it was introduced, but after, people are positive, think this was a good idea, it proved to work, and it proved not to change how the business sector is working dramatically.
I know that your center does research on these topics. Why is research so important?
Yeah, I think it's really very important to map and monitor the changes and where there's slowdowns, where there's not changes happen. So for example, when it comes to gender differences in top positions, we have something called the gender balance scorecard, where we every second year map the gender distribution in top positions in the biggest Norwegian companies. So in this way, we have been able to see what is happening here, and where do we find change, and where is it slowing down, and so on.
So there's a lot of work in front of us, and that's also a bit of the problem, because so many in Norway and maybe all of Scandinavia, they believe that we are finished.
But it's a good thing that we have researchers that tell us that we are.
Yes. We actually we need to know where is changes happening fast and where is really nothing happening, and also maybe most importantly try to understand why is change so difficult. What are the obstacles? Yeah.
snacks?
Yeah. Yeah. Those maybe. These are pale.
Those are pale.
This really looks like a cartoon.
I think when we come to the conclusion, because we have like we had this system in society that makes sure that the society is equal with all of the laws and the legislation and the ombud and the corporation, the tripartite corporation. But when we come to the conclusion, we need to focus on that we still have our challenges and that we're not finished yet, and also how, if we're not careful, rights can be taken away from us again.
Yeah. And then maybe we could have, in the end, because to sum it up, that you and me are present again.
We have some thoughts about the future, like where we are now.
Yeah, and maybe if one of us is saying that, well, are we there yet? And then
can we relax now? Or are we just finished?
Yeah,
can we lean back and relax? But we can't.
And maybe Mari Teigen can answer that because I believe she's good on that topic. And maybe she can have the last word and not us. Yeah, I believe that will be a good ending. This is cool.